I think there definitely needs to be open and honest and authentic and sincere conversations. I don't think it works if it's a one-way street. It doesn't work if the employer is offering all of this amazing support and resources and the employees aren't using it. But on the other hand, it doesn't work if it's the employees speaking to a deaf ear either. So there definitely needs to be, it needs to come from both sides. Employees need to let the employer know what they need or what would help, I guess, and being proactive in that. And on the same foot or the same hand, the employer needs to do the same thing as well and open a forum where that can be discussed. So if they don't have ideas and they don't have anything that's structured, open it to the employees. And same with the employees. Go to your employers and ask them, what can you do to support me? I'm really struggling. So, and I must admit, I think I've worked for companies for long and short periods. I think in all of my time, I've only worked for maybe one employer that's actually done that. Maybe two. Maybe one of my most recent employers had done that as well, made it as part of the onboarding process, just said these are the resources that as an employee you have, as well as talking to your manager. But there are some other things outside of that that we can do to support you if you're having issues. But I think sometimes you walk into an employment space and you don't feel that you can have that conversation, especially sort of, I guess, bigger, older institutions that I guess they frown on this new age mental health and well-being. Like, don't see the value in investing in the employees' mental health and well-being. I think at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to really suffer. They're not going to get the talent. The talent they've got, they're probably just going to age in those positions and not actually add a lot of value to the company. So they're the companies that, great people aren't going to want to go to.
In higher education specifically, offering some of the same services to faculty and staff that are offered to students. Specifically, I'm talking about physical health, ways of encouraging people to take charge of their health. We have a fairly well-equipped gym, but I rarely see faculty or staff there because we can't get a minute away from our computers. We have a lovely campus with lots of green space. I'd love to be able to take a walk, but my workload is such that it's rarely possible. And so I think if there's things that can be done to allow some of those same support structures for employees as there are for students, in my case, I think people would be in a much better space. We have rooms on campus dedicated to students' needs for reflection, meditation, prayer, whatever they want to use them for, but we're highly discouraged from using them because it's a space for students. Well, a similar space, I think, could really help people's mental health because we could get away for just a couple seconds, clear our heads, take a small walk, and then walk back refreshed. One of the big things to me, I think, is right now, so much attention is being paid to equitable pay. And even though that's not necessarily a physical structure that can be in place for employees, it is a means of support. And it is a means of recognizing people's contribution, and reluctance to pay people appropriately, if not outright antagonism to it, I think is contributing just as much to people's sense of mental health in the workplace. It's something that can be done that might change people's minds about whether or not they want to continue with that organization, or whether they think they need to move on to a new opportunity.
Yeah, so my employer as a whole have a really good resources and support for employees' mental health and well-being. But I think what happened is, I think most of those are very generic. Of course, a lot of them are very useful, right? Like the medical health, for example, like professional health that we can call in. That's free for us. That's a huge help. And the mental health resources, and if there's a training or workshops that they offer the thing is, sometimes those training and resources are things where it's not easy to find. So if you are not paying attention on your email or in the website where there's news or update, you will not be able to know what is being offered. So I think there's improvement we can do there. How can those resources be make sure that every single people, even up to the bottom of the organization, knows that those are provided to them, those are available to them. Even if the company provide those resources, at the end of the day, it's actually the leaders, right? How these leaders implement and make sure, not just implement, but model that well-being and mental health is important, is priority, and it's on top, that they value it. It's on top of their list. Like safety, right? This, for us, safety is always number one. And I can see that from our leaders. They always talk about safety. Safety is number one. We cannot be doing what we're doing if we're not safe. I wish that they would do the same for mental health and well-being. For them to walk the talk, because if they value mental health and well-being, and there are many people in the organization that's shouting, we have so much things in our plate, our workload is beyond what we are capable of doing in the given time that we have. I would really call out our leaders to say, it's okay to spend for the well-being and mental health of your people, because you may spend now, but there will be a great return. It's a long-term return that you will not see at the moment, but you will see eventually. Because I feel like my leaders are thinking about like, oh, we need to, we don't have a budget, we need to cut the budget, we need to make sure that we are good financially. Yes, we made good financially, but you're hurting your people. In the last 2 years, there's a lot of good talent leave the company, not just because there's a better opportunity outside, but they don't feel they're being supported in that aspect. And I don't want to be in that boat that, okay, they're not supporting me, they're not hearing me, then might as well go where I'm being valued, heard. So yeah, I would like them to think that it's okay to spend for what the employee need, so that then we can keep them because they're a good talent, and so that then we can retain our good talent and really stop. There's a term for that one. Like, we stop people from leaving. We definitely cut the demand if we can, right? If they don't want to increase the number of people, meaning they don't want to hire because they don't have the budget to hire more people, then cut the demand. If they cannot cut the demand because that additional workload is equal to X number of million of euros, then invest on additional people.
It's a lot, but I think the initial interaction has to come back to the employer, because the employer is never going to speak up about their mental health, what they're going through and the struggles they're having, if they're not feeling safe in their environment. An employer needs to provide, and not just the employee as a whole. I can't say NAB Group need to provide an environment where everyone feels safe to sit around in the circle and sing Kumbaya to each other. But NAB's job is to provide leadership where the leaders provide that level of safety to their team. And they did that. If you don't have a safe space in your business for employees to open up, then they can't make their end of this, because it is a two-way agreement. An employee does need to speak up if they're struggling. Everyone needs to speak up if they're struggling. So unless you create that safe working environment where leadership's approachable, or HR is easily accessible, or the support mechanisms like NAB has with My Coach readily available to staff. If staff don't know about that, then how can they reach out? If they don't feel safe, how can they reach out? So the original onus or the onus of all this lies with the employer creating that safe space, but then it's on you to actually speak up. Thankfully, I've done a bit of stuff in the space, so for me, when it got hard, speaking up wasn't difficult. But I mean, there's so many people who do, and unfortunately, and I don't want to get into gender demographics and things like that, but men don't speak up enough. We're really bad at it. We don't talk, and especially the important stuff. We don't do hard talk. We don't talk enough about how we're feeling, especially at work. We want to talk analytics. We want to talk numbers. We want to talk productivity. We don't want to talk about how we're feeling. And anyone who's been in the game knows that how you're feeling is directly reflected in your numbers and your productivity and your stats and your KPIs. And if you're not on top of your game, you don't perform. So the employer needs to make sure that staff know what their avenues are to speak up about how they're feeling. They need to make sure that the space is safe, inclusive, and that support is readily available. And then it's on the staff member to speak up and say, hey, look, I'm struggling, point you in the right direction. So the employer needs to create the safe space, have the right structure in place, and then, yeah, as an employee, they're not mind readers. You can't just say, hey, you should have noticed I was having a hard time. No, I'm managing 7 other people, mate. I can see that your numbers aren't great, but unless you tell me you're having a hard time, I'm not going to just encroach on that. So, safe spaces, structured channels and education around how staff can get that assistance is imperative, but there has to be an onus on the staff member to speak up, and we have to get better at that. Society is getting better at it. I think men are getting better at it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think good leadership plays a massive part in it. A good leader will notice that a person's not themselves, they're just off. And a good leader creates that safe space and invites conversation. But you can invite conversation as much as you want. There is still an onus on the employee to speak up. So yeah, I think that's the relationship. The employer creates a safe space and has a structure in place. The leader needs to lead the way, notice what's happening, and be diligent about it, not be afraid to invite conversation. But then the final onus is on the employee to speak up.
So like constructive conversation, clear communication, transparency, just to get a shared understanding. And I'll dovetail on that and say that what comes out of all that is you develop trust. I have worked for a boss in the past where we did have enough constructive conversation to the point where we understood each other before we had to talk it out about what a shared goal was. And soon she could just hand me the goal and tell me to run with it, and I would. So that was really important. I think on the employee side, what really helps is for them to take initiative. Like I said in one of my examples, I've been given a goal where the employer has told me very upfront, like, hey, we do not know if this is even possible. So could you try to run with this and figure out if it's even doable? And that's where the initiative part comes in. So now the employee is like, okay, let me do some research. Let me talk to some people. Let me find out if we can either do this at all or bring it under budget or on time. So initiative really helps. It also helps when the employer isn't as upfront or clear as they could be about what's involved in getting the goal done. Maybe they don't know, but maybe they're not communicating it. So I think that on the employer side is their responsibility. Like, are they really aware of what they're asking and what's involved? And if they don't know, are they at least just being honest and transparent about like, hey, I don't know, will you find out for me?
I think we need to challenge both the perception and reality of stigma to allow others to reach out when struggling in silence without feeling unsafe or that they're risking their careers. Most people say that they do not feel stigma about those with mental health issues. But on the other hand, they feel that others do. So there is this huge gap between actual and perceived stigma. And that is a major barrier, and we've got to break it down. Prioritizing the mental health and wellness of people is not only the right thing to do, but it's actually good for business. And there's enough research out there now. There's a huge amount of research being developed that shows the benefits in terms of increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, reduced presenteeism. If you have a healthy workforce, you're going to have a better business, a better organization. So it's the right thing to do, and it's good for business.
But that's just not the case. And I think if I had said early on that I acknowledge this is a two-way relationship, you need me, you need my talent just the way I need you, and I need to be compensated for my work, maybe the dynamic would have been different from the start. Or alternatively, if I presented that concept to them in the interview stage and it was just flat out rejected or met with negative connotations, negative reactions, I would know that that's not the organization for me. You are your own best advocate. Don't be afraid to put out there exactly what you need, what is going to make you successful, even if you think that answer isn't going to sound appealing, is going to turn off a potential employer. My advice is to stand true to those values. And if it means it's taking a little bit of extra time to find the right place of employment, or it means having tough conversations with your manager, it is worth it, because you will not last somewhere where you are deeply unhappy and you shouldn't have to. So yeah, as I said before, I think a lot of these things are set in the very early days, and I would just encourage employees to stand true to their values when they're looking for work, and also use those interview stages to express themselves and get this sort of info out there so the employer knows what to expect with this employee. And then I think for employers, yeah, again, just making sure that your hiring team and your hiring managers are going to also treat it as an equal relationship, and be open to hearing feedback and not shut down, not reject ideas, and just make it really well known to their employees that this is a place you can bring your concerns, you can bring your ideas, and they will be heard and respected, and we can talk about it and possibly create some change if we need to. Setting it up front is a win-win. And it's scary when you're looking for a new job, also depending on your situation, but when you're entering into this new relationship with an employer, it's so scary to have those conversations. It's so scary before you've signed your job offer to really put yourself out there and say these things that potentially are not going to be received well. Like, I am someone who will work very hard, but my work day ends at 4 because I have to pick my kids up and I have to feed them dinner, and I have other things going on in my life. These workplaces I've observed that have these employee-led wellness committees or wellness initiatives have a really, really, really great way of appealing to their employees and retaining their talent. I've seen it time and time again where I've placed candidates at organizations where there's a specific committee that's just concerned about employee wellness, and I hear from those employees over and over that means a lot to them, and it's even inspired them to take part in it. And I just think it would be great if we could start seeing things like that happening more, especially as the workplace has evolved so much in the last few years, and things that worked 5 years ago just don't work anymore.
I would also say having regular check-ins, like with my manager, I think every 2 weeks we have a one-on-one for about half an hour, and that's a chance where I can just kind of ask for guidance or vent a little bit if I need to. So I think the regular contact in those key relationships is helpful. I think having a liberal leave policy is really important. I've worked for some companies where I've had unlimited PTO, and if I just wasn't feeling well and my immediate work was done, I could just, take care of myself and not have to worry about logging hours as PTO. I think that's something that modern companies are heading toward is trusting their people to get the work done and take care of themselves. I love it when an organization has some kind of mindfulness or employee well-being practice that they really foster more than just like, here's a link on our internet site. I've been fortunate in that a lot of places I've worked over the last 10 years or so, I've offered and then been able to facilitate a workplace mindfulness practice. That's something that I found a lot of benefit in it personally, dealing with some anxiety and things like that. And I know there's a big movement. Mindfulleader.org is doing a lot of research and putting out case studies around how having a mindfulness practice or a mindfulness coach or someone in the organization can help sort of reduce stress, reduce timeout, improve bottom lines, because happy, engaged, supported employees tend to do better work. Yeah, I think, and this also came up recently, so it's interesting that we're having this conversation now. I think it's important for me as an employee to know kind of what my capacity and what my limits are, and then to be able to articulate that in a productive way. I think a lot of people, maybe more women than men, I don't know if that's helpful to say, but I think there's a tendency to just take stuff on and take stuff on and take stuff on and then kind of get to a breaking point. And I think the organization has a right to expect of me that I'm going to do my best. I'm going to, in the rest of my life, set myself up for success so that when I'm focused on work, I can be focused on work. And then I think it's along with that, there needs to be a mechanism to say, I'm really struggling with this, or I need clarity around this part of this effort, or, here's where I need support so that I can continue to do my best work.
I think it does speak to what I was just mentioning, that it is bi-directional. So it's top down and bottom up. It has to be leadership walking the talk, but it also has to be, entry level, all aspects of the company, feeling like they can voice their needs, feeling like they can ask for what their needs are in a very rapidly changing world that we live in. Again, I think understanding that there is often a disconnect with leadership and, on the ground level employees, that leadership may think they're doing a great job in providing all these benefits, but if there's a disconnect and not enough communication or transparency with their employees at all levels and all roles, both parties need to take ownership. All parties need to take ownership in creating a safe, healthy, mentally safe space to come to work every day. And that's not easy. I think that takes time to build that trust and that rapport and that communication. But it is possible. I think when I've worked for companies where I felt like leadership really got it, really understood their employee needs, that was such a sweet spot. And that's not something easily replicated, but it is possible. And I've definitely felt it. I've experienced it. And that's what's kept me at past roles, because I felt that connection. I felt that understanding from C-suite all the way down. Partnership, I think partnership comes to mind as well.
Again, it really comes back to leading by example. I think is the most powerful for one, and listening and hearing. They're a little bit different. You can listen and you can yes someone to death, but if you really take the time to hear someone, be in the moment, stay present, all those things that, especially working in the wellness industry, we preach about all the time, but really walking the walk and listening and hearing what they're saying to you, taking that in, letting the energy transfer happen, and know that you are part of that moment with that person, I think that's incredibly powerful. And I have found that the more I genuinely try to hear what they're saying, because we all speak different languages. We all listen to things differently. We learn things differently. We hear things differently. You could tell me that the sky is blue and I might hear that the sky is purple just because I hear it differently. But if I really take the time to listen to how that person is trying to express what they need in that moment, and as a leader or an employer, I really need to make sure that I choose to be present and hear them. And then you can be so much more transparent. It takes away all that fear and judgment, and it levels the playing field of humans connecting with humans. The employee has, I think, most of the responsibility. I think ultimately it is up to yourself. You only have you to answer to at the end of the day, that you are happy, healthy, and focused. However, when you're set up for that kind of environment, it's magic. It all flows together, and there's a synergy to it. I think we're not taught that as much as a culture when you start, your first day on the job. It's, either drink the Kool-Aid or rah, rah, rah. But I think if you teach that as the culture of the work environment, you start off there. And that's how you would start, is you are responsible for your own well-being, and we are here to support that. When that's not there, it's you're responsible for your own well-being. And then that quickly falls away when all those other pieces come into play, like, oh, you're leaving to, drop your kids off at soccer practice, or you have a doctor's appointment, or, something like that, or you're not going to work on the weekends. I'm funny on boundaries because we toss that word around a lot, that, you've got to have boundaries, but I'm a big believer in above and beyond. If someone asks me for help, I want to help. If someone asks me to do something, I want to do it because I want to do it. I want to do it for the best of my abilities for them, as well as, acknowledgement for myself that I could. So I agree in some regards about having boundaries, but I think it's a scary term that we throw around, that it's bigger than it is, because if you're in a healthy work environment, there are no boundaries. It's an all skate, everybody's in the same mindset. And it's magic. It doesn't happen very often in a lot of work environments, but once in a while you get that magic group of people where everybody's synergistic and a team player, and you pick up where somebody left off, or you help pick someone up when they're having a rough day. Those things are really crucial to your own wherewithal. It's really, I'm a big believer in taking accountability and responsibility for yourself, and knowing when to ask for help. And it all kind of comes around in a big circle, that ultimately you are responsible for your own feelings. No one can tell you how to feel, but you can ask for help. And if you have a leader who's approachable, or a HR department, or a colleague, or a team that support each other, then it's a totally different fabric, and the culture is very different, and the productivity just goes straight up.
Yeah, for individual, for us employee, yeah, I would advocate for us all to really think about, to prioritize ourselves, if to really make time to make sure that we are healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and that's equal to positive well-being. And if any of those is not met, it's time to voice it out in a manner where we are heard. We can't just say, yes, I'll do this, yes, I'll do that, and inside we are degrading inside. And then for our leaders, please help us. If you find members in your team that doesn't say I'm burnt out, even though maybe they are, be observant and be the voice for them if they can't voice out themselves, and partner with them to find solution. Maybe the solution is not easy, or maybe it's not simple. Partner with them anyway, so that then they would really stay longer, because they feel that despite, even though how hard it is, you stick with them, then their loyalty, they will be loyal to their role, to their work, to the company, and that loyalty will pay off. They will stick. They will give good results. So that's my last words.
I think really clear communication, not just around the goals and each other's understanding, but like self-awareness around how to co-create shared understanding of, okay, do we really understand each other about what the goal really means or is, or how to get there, or how much time is involved, or how much resources. Like, it's actually constructive to have debates about, like, well, I think this will take 3 days. Well, I think this will take a week. And then let's talk about it.
Trust your instincts, trust your gut. Make sure you have your priorities aligned as far as what's important to you in the work environment. If you find yourself in a job where you're not the right fit, then it's time to figure out a solution for yourself, because it's your life, and it took me a long time to learn that. I just thought I had to work. And, I'm a particular generation where, we do work for FaceTime, and we're taught that, 9 to 6 is just the tip of the iceberg. And you got to work these 80-hour weeks to prove in hospitality, which is the environment I work in, to prove that you're valued and worthy. And that's not true. What you have to do is really figure out what's important to you. When I had to figure out what was important to me, because I'm very different than most of my colleagues in that, and I'll be honest, I'll be really transparent and share, I don't have the same responsibilities that a lot of my colleagues have because of, my age. Most of my colleagues are, families and children and responsibilities that are different than mine. And I find myself, single and a little bit older, and a caregiver for an elderly parent who struggles with health issues. And the way society treats us is a little bit different when you're single and, and a little bit older. And it's a whole different bucket to deal with. So it took a lot of soul searching for me to realize who I am and what's important to me and what I want to give. And then the last thing I'll add to that is staying grateful. I mean, I work in hospitality. I wouldn't do it if I didn't have genuine care and want to serve. But the way that comes about is through gratitude and feeling grateful that, I have so much to be grateful for. I mean, the reality is that, we live in an environment in a country where we have a lot, and we've been through a lot, but we have so much. And having a grateful mindset puts everything into perspective for me.
I'm seeing folks taking a stand against harmful behavior in the workplace, whether it's related to gender or sexuality or any other of the ways that we tend to categorize and separate and divide people. So I think fostering, the diversity and inclusion movements, I think are really powerful. I think that's super helpful. And I have also seen stories of, someone having a physical crisis or a family health crisis where their employer has said, you take the time you need to do what you need to do. Fortunately, I haven't had something like that come up. So I can't speak to that from my own personal experience, but I think those are kinds of things where I think the pandemic helped us see that we're all human beings first and foremost, right? We're human beings, not human resources. And when we're able to create an environment for people to do their best work, they generally will do it if you have the right people in the right places doing the right things. And that actually brings up another point. I think the language we use together really does a lot. In my current environment, I hear a lot about resources, and I always want to hold up like my mouse or a stapler or a pen, because that's a resource. That's the thing I use to do a job. I think we need to talk about the people who are doing the work rather than dehumanizing them as resources. So I think the language that we use with each other is a really big part of wellness.
Again, looking at why you hired that employee. What are the things that brought them to you and why you were attracted to them? So really understanding your talent. You know, can you encourage, enhance, develop that talent from within at your company and really create those opportunities to have your employees thrive, whether that's in a new well-being initiative, something that joins and unifies people in new ways to kind of focus on inclusion. You know, DEI is such an important aspect of company culture that's, you know, a hot button issue, but it's always been important. It's not just a buzzword. I think feeling like you belong, feeling like you're included and you're seen and valued at whatever position you're at, I think feelings of belonging and inclusion are key in, you know, bridging those gaps and making you feel like you're part of a whole and seen as a human versus an employee or just a number.